pure source water company. I really appreciate Mr. McGilvray's presentation and the thoughtful collection and presentation of data that he has put together. I would also like to ask you to consider the possibility of increasing the size of the intertie connection between the city of Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District. It already exists at the O'Neill Ranch, as you know well. But if that intertie connection size were increased, it would allow the ability to accept more water during storms from the North Coast streams. These, as you know, are the pre-1914 water source that are not restricted by water rights law, that the river is. And it could really save the Mid-County groundwater basin by pumping more water from those North Coast streams into the Mid-County area, either injecting it and treated into the aquifer or selling it directly and letting Soquel Creek Water District's wells rest. A recent article in the Santa Cruz Sentinel interviewing Mr. Duncan, the general manager of Soquel Creek, indicated that the groundwater levels after 1 year of high rain and multiple years of conservation have come up to historically high levels, according to the article. So that tells me that it's incredibly resilient and responsive to measures, and that if we were to quickly incorporate the North Coast stream waters, we could really push back that saltwater interface that we are also concerned about. I am encouraged that Soquel Creek Water District has taken the prudent action of the pipe loop study that's being conducted in Virginia now. And I am encouraged also that those studies are looking very good in terms of compatibility of surface water and groundwater interfaces. And I would like to urge your group to encourage Soquel Creek Water District to move forward with the closed system study rather than just waiting for the bench test. Because if we get that information quickly, we could ostensibly harvest water from the North Coast streams this coming rain year. And that would behoove everyone. And I finally want to just suggest that given the state's move to consolidate water systems, I think it's also prudent for the city of Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District to consider consolidation. This could not only combine administrative efforts, but it could also perhaps solve some of the legal issues that exist in water transfer around in the service districts. Thank you very much.
Any of the members wish to all right? Yep. Yes, sir.
What I've learned in talking to water rights attorneys is that the water right applies to a particular region, and even if consolidation happens, it still applies just to that geographical area. So a merger between agencies would not suddenny cause water to be able to flow in each other.
And one more.
Yes, sir.
One of the things I question actually about both of the comments that we received is whether they're actually, at least at present, beyond the purview of our agency, because to the extent that we might want to encourage people to engage in certain acts, we would not be in a position to do so until we have our plan and we've decided what kind of projects would be within the scope of the plan. At present, we're just sort of,
I agree.
we're treading water while we go through that process. So in terms of the scope of this agency, at present, it's going to be on us.
It is.
That's lovely.
All right, so the next item is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove from consent?
I would like to remove the previous agenda, the previous minutes.
The minutes.
And the other three are, they contain either an or. So So it's not clear what you're approving in consent. It says X or Y.
Can't have a choice.
You can't have a choice, right?
Okay.
So they need to be done manually, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's just go to the minutes then. Item 4.1.
Okay, I'm just going to go through things I found. In the very beginning, it mentioned alternates president, Ms. Christensen, and I think instead Dr. LaHue was there instead. In fact, he's referred to all through the rest of the minutes as being there and making motions and so forth. So I think he was in fact a member present, and Ms. Christensen was not an alternate.
No, I'm not an alternate, so I was,
You were present.
I'm listed as president on the,
Okay, well, and Ms. Christensen was a public member, but she was not there as an alternate.
oh, right.
Okay, on page 10, the third bullet in, the sentence says, activities funded by the MGA will to increase as part. I think it says will need to increase, is probably what was intended. Going on. Looks like I've lost them. Okay, well, that's the one I found.
Okay, anyone else? I have a few, yes.
I was present. Minutes don't reflect that.
Oh. Well, that should be rectified. Okay, we got that? I just have a few minor typos, that I might as well, as long as it's not on consent, I might as well mention. On page 5 of 77, under Max Halger's presentation, 5.1, fourth line down, it just should say findings instead of finding. That's so minor, I don't worry about that one. I'm used to looking at student work, so I think I'm probably on page 14 of 77, item 7.4.1, it just says Groundwater Sustainability Advisory Committee. It should be Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee. Sorry, just plan needs to be in there.
I have another change on that page.
Okay,
Down under board comments, the paragraph that starts with Mr. Wimmerman.
that's it. I have two there too.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I found the same ones.
Well, it should be addressed,
Yes.
and it should be and instead of has on the second line.
Right.
I have maybe combined there. Both these two minutes. And then on page 15, under 7.5.1, it just says, Mr. Bracklemani encouraged board members to complete their disclosure forms and Mr. Carson and Mr. Bracklemani with questions. So I'm assuming that and
Okay.
forward them or ask them questions, some verb. Needs a verb. Okay. And then I think my last one is on the next page, page 16 of our agenda, 13 of the minutes. There's a sentence that I couldn't quite understand. It said, "Ms. Menard responded to confirm that risks and a variety of related considerations is in the nature of these initial conversations informing the sustainability indicators."
I don't remember what I said, but I could probably.
I'm not a bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't quite get what the meaning of that was.
Yeah.
It needs to just. That is all I saw. No one has any more, any motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve as modified by comments.
Second.
Okay. Maskin, second by Dr. Hughes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
One abstain.
One abstention? Okay. And Cynthia's abstaining. Okay.
And just a comment,
Yes.
I think in the future, minor
punctuation.
Yeah.
Just like,
It's
those
just-
should
it was
just be,
brought up anyway.
yeah, it's good to be handed over.
Yeah. All right, so item 4.2, approve the modification to hydrometric contract. So,
I make the motion, number one.
Second?
is there any public comment?
Yeah. My name is Becky Steinberger. I question why this board would want to weigh insurance for a company that would be, it seems to me, doing significant computer modeling for the groundwater sustainability plan. If this requirement is in a subcontractor document that this board has agreed upon, I think you need to hold to it because it's there for a reason. And I really question the wisdom of waiving this liability requirement for a contractor that will be doing significantly important work for the plan. Thank you.
What else? Yes,
Does or can liability fall under hydrometrics liability insurance?
I'm sure they have liability insurance, I'm not exactly sure how it works. It gets kind of a little, when you leave the United States, it's a little tricky. I think we did seek council's input on this.
So the terms of the contract require that the liability is on a subcontractor. So there's the clause in there requires that it would be on Artesia.
And what kinds of liabilities are we talking about? It's a $10,000, that's a pretty small subcontract. What kind of liability are we considering?
It would be the general liability if there's some finding that similar to what the liability that hydrometrics should be holding on developing the model. I mean, this is a small aspect of the seawater intrusion component of the model.
Are we waiving the liability of Artesia or the liability of hydrometric?
It's waiving the requirement that hydrometrics requires Artesia to be liable.
Well, it's more than that. It's waiving the requirement that hydrometrics have to provide insurance specific to Artesia, which hydrometrics insurer is probably blocking at because the subcontractor can't obtain its own insurance for coverage outside the country. Correct.
I think we should notice, though, we don't actually need to get rid of this clause. There's a place there where we would initial it, and hydrometrics would initial it, and it doesn't happen anyway.
That's right. So what Ron referenced was the council was that because that wasn't initial as part of the contract's execution, that it's an amendment to the contract, and that's why it's back to the board.
With direction.
No, with direction to authorize, to authorize there's already a provision in there that allows for that waiver, but it wasn't taken at the time that the contract was executed. And so if you want to take that action now, you require that action.
So is it the recommendation of the relevant staff that this insurance waiver be approved?
Yes, it's waived and
Yeah, okay. I'm going to make that motion.
It was already there. It was already.
Is there a motion already?
Made
Okay.
and seconded.
Okay, sorry.
It's just, yes,
So, if I understand correctly, you checked the council on this.
I did.
Okay, you checked the council on this. Did council define what the risk was or what the consequence of this waiver would be in terms of real terms for us so that we could be satisfied that we're not giving up any valuable rights that we might need in the future?
No, council weighed in on the process and whether or not this constituted an amendment to the contract that would have to go back to the board for approval. Council didn't do any sort of risk assessment on the work that is being performed by Artesia.
Because for MGA to sign it, the board action can be signed.
Correct.
Okay, so, and that's what we're being asked to do. And this is a $10,000 contract, so it's not like the bigger part of the contract here.
That's right, it's a $500,000 contract approximately with Techmetrics.
Right, but this is a relatively small function within it.
Correct.
And just to clarify, the staff recommends the
Okay, so there's been a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4.3, which is modifications to the Regional Management Foundation's contract.
Yeah, this is, let me remind myself here. Let's see, back in 2018 at the March meeting, I forgot that in a second. Can you want to help me out here?
Sure. So there's three elements to this. Two of them are prior budget approvals that were approved previously by the board that amended the amount of the RWMF's contract. One to deal with the grant administration in the current fiscal year, $5,000 amendment. So it was a $5,000 amendment to the overall contract amount in 17-18 that had to do with additional staff services, in part a result of additional staff time on the GSP advisory committee support. And then the third element is, again, an insurance waiver, because the foundation's insurance does not cover completed operations. So complete operations is an insurance clause within the standard independent contractor agreement. Doesn't really pertain to the type of services that are being performed with the grant administration.
So-
and support.
One of the reasons that's the case is that the standard contract was probably not really a professional services contract in the first place. It was more like a construction contract. So it had provisions in it that when we adopted that, turned out not to be applicable in this kind of a situation. So this is a cleanup of that situation.
Any public comment on this item?
I have a question, why the amounts need to be increased? What is it that's being done that requires the additional money over what has already been allocated to the Regional Water Management Foundation in what remains of this year's budget?
So one of the two items is for the Groundwater Sustainability Plan administration. So that wasn't included in the 17-18 scope because at the time that scope was formed and brought to the board, we hadn't applied for the grant. And so the funding allows for, now that the grant has been awarded, to handle the initial administration in this year. And so when the grant's received by the MGA, a variety of grant requirements and grant acceptance steps that have to happen. And so this is to provide our staff time to cover that. That was not included within our scope of work. Second item was a budget increase to support activities throughout 17 and 18, and specifically activities in support of the GSP Advisory Committee, which again was not part of the original scope, because when that was developed, the GSP Advisory Committee, what played out to be the staff support that was a part of that, wasn't specifically budgeted for.
Right.
Does that include the audio?
All right, so any discussion, motions?
I'll make a motion to move the staff recommendation for the proposed contract modifications.
Mr. Haskins, Ms. Matheson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. The next item is 4.4, just for the workplace policy initiative. Public have any comment on this item?
I do. Becky Steinberg, I've read this and not being a public employee, I don't know, does this also, since the MGA is accepting money, Does it also mean that then the state could come in at any time and request samples, to make sure that people are drug-free? Does that extend to the agencies that are in this joint powers agreement? What does it mean? Or is it just sending out a nice little brochure saying, don't use drugs? I'd just like to know, with a little more clarity, what this opens all of the agencies up to. Thank you.
From the way I understand it, it's just an acknowledgement of the policy that it's information provided.
It's also very clear this applies to BGA employees, of which there are none.
Right.
There you go. The question on that is,
Does it apply to contractors?
You don't have to worry.
No, and it is, in order to receive grant funding, we have to have it.
Contractors have to be informed of the policy, to your question.
Do we require the contractors to have their own policies?
No, that's not part of the standard independent contractor agreement. But once this policy goes forward, any contractors or subcontractors would have to be made aware that this policy exists and be a copy of it.
and thus comply.
So they have to comply while they're doing our work, not when they're doing advances work.
There you go.
Sorry, follow-up question. Is the policy we're referring to, we have to draft a policy, or there's one that the state gives us that we have to comply with?
Policy is attached there, so that's the extent of the policy, the two-page policy that's attached to that.
Yeah.
I'll second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you.
But I would like to make a comment about the format of these last three, because you correctly pulled them. It was an either or, but it seems to me all of these, it's my impression that there was a strong recommendation from staff to proceed with a certain policy, and the last one seems utterly perfunctory. So I don't know why it's phrased as possibly approving it or not. Maybe that's just the format you use, but I think it's just the format you use. But it could also be a format recommendation is to approve, and it's on consent, and then you do it on consent. And it's just.
But for example, in our board, we now just have a motion to do it.
That's
and there's no
what
board.
as well, but I think that's how the county does it. So I
We always do
would
that.
suggest if there's a strong, explainable staff recommendation, put that in as the action and put it on consent.
It can still always be pulled.
It can always be pulled, but then, and then of course the things that require more discussion and direction, then those are on an action discussion item. But I think to the extent feasible to be, if you put it on consent, do it legitimately as a recommendation.
Thank you. Could be.
That's just a comment. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right, well, the next item is to approve the fiscal year budget.
Okay. So the fiscal year budget, as proposed, is very similar to what was proposed at the March 15th meeting. The main difference is that while there are no new items, there are a number of items that were shifted to different budget categories. And so there was some allusion and discussion of this at the March meeting, and we did go through. So I can run through specifically what those changes are, because if you were comparing this version to the March version, you would see the differences principally in the subtotal amounts for the different major categories. So if we are looking at the agency administration and staff support, the senior planner's time was shifted into the Groundwater System Building Plan Development. The planning grant administration item was moved up into administration. So the net result of that is that both the estimated actual amounts and the proposed budget amounts are different than what they were in March, even though the individual line item amounts have not changed. There were no changes within the legal support category. Moving into the technical work, one difference between this and the prior version is that Hydrometrics estimates that there will be $30,000 rolling over from 17-18 into next year. The prior budget showed that amount being fully expended. Part of that estimated rollover fund is for the $10,000 that was discussed in the prior board item for the work to be done by Artesia. Within the Groundwater Sustainability Plan development category, again, you'll see the senior planner's time appearing there. There's a line item for graphical support, which is estimated at $50,000. And so the point of this work is, as indicated in the note there, is really to convey complex material in a way that makes it more readily understandable, both by the Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee as well as the general public. And so that line item specifically had been an outreach before, and there had been some back and forth about which frankly was a better fit. The work itself hasn't changed, but in the long run, staff thought that really the intent of its purpose was really to help us to develop the Groundwater Sustainability Plan and to foster better discussions amongst the advisory committee, the board, the general public as these technical complex items develop. The amount, again, hasn't changed. It's just shifted budget categories. And so all told, the proposed budget is just over 1.3 million. The memo shows what the cost share per agency is. And so there's a table within the memo that shows using the same approach as in 17-18, the prior fiscal year, where the unused funds are rolled over and subtracted from the overall budget amount, and then the cost share split at 70% for Soquel Creek, 10% for the other three agencies, shows the agency contributions.
Tim, can I ask any questions? Most of this can be covered by the grant from DWR.
Right, so the grant award from DWR, as you know, is 1.5 million. The grant will actually fund work back to July 1st of 2017. And so there is a lot of activity that is going to happen within the upcoming fiscal year that ultimately will be reimbursed by the grant. But the timing right now is the biggest uncertainty on when that reimbursement will actually come through. And that has to do with a couple of different grant-related items. And one of them has to do with the way that the grant is filled out. Typically, the Department of Water Resources either likes all of the match made up front. So there is a $1.5 million match on this grant. So all of the match contribution would have to be paid up front before the grant reimbursement kicks in. The other alternative is that as each line item within the grant is spent down, they are split at that exact ratio of the grant match. So in other words, every submittal that goes in is a 50-50 cost share. And in actuality, that can become much more challenging to manage because there's certain activities that the timelines and when those activities occur don't necessarily align with the grant schedule. And so there's certain activities that have been done first that we plan to use for match and certain activities later. And so we're still waiting to, the grant was just recently awarded. We're still working it out with DWR in terms of how that's going to be built out. But the take-home point from that is that the staff recommendation, the treasurer's strong recommendation was not to reduce the upfront contribution because there's uncertainty about when the reimbursements are coming through. Eventually, it's coming through.
We need to keep functioning.
Right. And the agency, as a relatively young agency, has a small reserve, and so the consultants, all the folks doing work, are still going to be invoicing the agency. There needs to be that reserve to pay that out.
Questions? Public comment on this item?
Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbrenner. I have some questions about the groundwater monitoring update under the technical work. The $10,000 budget increase for hydrometrics to do the pumping and recharge information to updates. According to the minutes, what I understand was that the group decided not to focus on that, not to do that this year, and instead wait until 2020 when it would be required and could be done under the SAGMA requirement. So I'm curious why $10,000 is being allocated to do that work now. I also have questions about a $50,000 graphic support budget. I wonder what that exactly involves. Is this going to be maybe putting some of those groundwater monitoring results and, for example, the Skytown results into the 3D video image like what Dr. Rosemary Knight did in Marina? What is this exactly going to be? Is it just going to be creating more paper? So I'd like some specific information on why it would cost $50,000. And to couple with that, the outreach budget has increased a lot. And I don't really honestly think that the 10 a.m. to noon weekday drop-in sessions are effective. And if that's costing a lot of money, I don't think that's a good way to spend the money on outreach. I think there are ways that you can engage a broader group of stakeholders. There have not been any private well stakeholder meetings for a very long time. And I really think we need to look at what would we get for $44,600 in outreach. What is planned? And I do think it needs to change in how the MGA and the GSP outreach to the public. And I also have an issue with the audio tapes of these meetings. They're very, very difficult to listen to. So I would support using some of this money for video recording that are much better to listen to and to observe because you can't tell who's talking. And it matters. Thank you.
If anyone else wishes to address us on this item? Okay. Back to...
So just one point of clarification, the decision at the last board meeting was to forego the biennial reporting, so that was $50,000 cost in hydrometrics, not the $10,000 cost. So the proposed $10,000 cost is to address the recharge and pumping, the reference in the notes there, but that's separate from the biennial report, and that's what the board has.
So, regarding outreach, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions here and with various outreach groups that we've done about the need to have outreach. And I feel strongly that it's important that we do fund the ability for us to do outreach. How we do that is an ongoing exploration on our part, and there are a number of subcommittees that keep hammering at how we could best do that, whether social media has a piece to that and what the best way is to get the information out to the public. But I certainly think that the answer is not to lower the budget for outreach. I think it's really important that we do fund outreach, particularly for the GSP planning process. And along that line, I think most board members know here that we are planning to do a public meeting in June to specifically more outreach. So
It's not July.
it's June 12th and 14th.
Sorry.
Understood, and that's like an amount. Every decision of what's done for public outreach will be made, to see if it's, based on whether it's deemed to be valuable or not. And we do have to definitely focus on communication.
Agree about the outreach, and that's item 5.3, really, agenda here, getting an ad hoc committee going to be more specific on that.
Yes.
But clearly it does need a budget, and I'm assuming that's a not to exceed. Build against that, and that's pretty critical at this point. So if there are no other comments, there are, happy to move the motion.
You want to move recommendations 1 and 2, I take it?
The first,
Fiscal year.
approve the
Yeah.
budget and also using that as benchmarks. So, okay, board action 1 and 2, there's a motion.
And there's a second, I believe.
Second. All right.
Sorry, was that both motions together?
The first 2 motions, yes, not the third one.
Was Ms. Matthews the first, and who was the second?
Dr. Dennis.
Yes. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so now we will move on to item 5.2.
Yeah, so at the request of the executive team, the Regional Water Management Foundation also continue to work administrative and supporting staff to continue with outreach, creating the plan, everything that's involved with what we're doing. So the total budgeted amount is attached in the attachment, $260,000, and it's outlaid there with exactly what I include. We couldn't do it. We have to have the support of every agency. I know Ralph, Central Stretch, staff-wise, all of us. So the recommendation is, there's 2 of them there. 1, to authorize the board chair to execute the contract in the amount of $295,000 with the RWMF and attached scope of work, and then authorize the general manager of Soquel Creek to sign a purchase order.
Any questions about this? Any public comment on this?
Sorry, question.
Oh, you did it.
Yeah, was this already in the budget we just approved, or just above and beyond the budget? This one, okay.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Second Steinberger. I have often voiced my concern about handing over the complete, as I understand it, the complete fiscal accountability to the Regional Water Management Foundation. Not that I don't think Mr. Carson's doing a good job. It's that it's not a transparent agency. You cannot, a citizen cannot submit a Public Records Act request and get an accounting of the money. Their board meetings are not open to the public. It is not transparent, and that's what I have a problem with. I would be much more comfortable with the grant administration, the payments, the tracking that I see in these scope of work details being done by the county agencies. There are people that can do that work at the county, and it may be less expensive, and it would be much more transparent to the public. And I think that's a big issue here. So I would like to see some discussion of that issue of transparency and accountability to the public regarding this money. Thank you.
Can I just point out real quick that all financial transactions are run through Soquel Creek Water District in the treasurer's position, and that the Community Foundation doesn't handle financial transactions for this body at all.
But that's not what I read in here.
Those should all be available.
All of them are available, publicly available through my office.
audited.
All financial transactions run through the treasurer's office and our auditors are audited.
But I have to pay to get that information. I have to pay $110
Okay.
every time.
It's another issue, so.
Okay.
Okay, so, any other board comments, motions?
We have 3 motions, both motions.
Okay. Going to, I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. And 5.3 is next, which is public outreach related. Who's got that one?
I think that's me.
All right, Darcy.
And this is just wanting to wrap up the engagement plan. We brought it before the board previously. There were some comments from the board members who wanted to work more closely with staff on finalizing the plan. And that was why we decided to bring this motion before the board so that an ad hoc committee could be formed to help staff with direction on completing that engagement plan.
Okay. Were there particular volunteers?
Well, there were 2 people who wanted to discuss it at that time, and that was Chair Marani, who's not here tonight, and Secretary Matthews.
I think they volunteered to be a part of it.
And that's her.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that I didn't see here is what the size or composition of the committee is being recommended by staff.
And I don't think we had a recommendation for that. We sort of wanted the board to have a discussion about what they saw fit to put together, basically.
So another way to approach this might be to ask if there are board members who have interest in sitting on this committee, and that might
Exactly.
That's what I was
resolve it itself.
Yes. Volunteers or voluntold. Like. Well, I think another approach is to suggest anyone who's interested in volunteering to notify the chair, and the chair can make that those appointments. It's open-ended, it's not a fixed number.
Yes.
I'm an alternate. I would volunteer. Do I apply as an alternate?
I can speak, I don't know. What you want is people who want to work on it.
I don't think anybody.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Moran is the chair. He was willing and interested in doing it. We were interested in doing it. This one meeting was interested. So, I think for now, I'm not sure what the most flexible way to approve it is, with particular people or just
I would just say the formation of an ad hoc committee.
To be appointed by the chair. In a membership not to be less than half.
To be less than.
To be less.
To be less than half of the board.
No more than 5.
No more than 5. And give the chair discretion to appoint and let the members who want to volunteer go to the chair.
That's
So moved.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
What about, since it's an ad hoc committee, it would be 6 months or less, what about the timing of forming it? Should we consider the best time for it to convene, and particularly in terms of the GSP?
The purpose is just to review and approve the communication engagement plan. It's not to conduct and oversee it. So I think that can be achieved in the amount of time.
I think the sooner we do that, the better.
Yeah, and maybe it helps to know that the reason we're trying to get this finished is we want to have it done before Sierra goes on maternity leave at the beginning of July.
Oh, wow.
There's a deadline.
So big turnaround.
Under 2 meetings. Yes. They're lucky.
But I'd say that the actual scheduling of it, we don't have to vote on all that stuff.
So that can be managed with staff, and they can make sure that the duration comes out to be less than 6 months.
Yes.
which seems pretty easy.
Okay. Any other comments?
So to be clear, interested parties are to contact the chair, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
The staff can assist Mr. Morani by setting out a reminder.
Imagine that he volunteered for that.
Will do.
All right, so there's been a motion, second. Any other questions? Comment?
Is there going to be public comment?
Yes.
I do. Becky Steinberger, thank you for forming this ad hoc committee. And I have noted that it's the same language as is required by the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, that the MGA and GSP must show that they have made an effort for communication and engagement, and those are the same wording that you've used here. So again, I want to thank you for doing this, and I really want to see some good outreach. I don't just want to have it a perfunctory exercise, and I trust that you will do a good job, and this committee will do a good job in really outlining and increasing the amount of effective public outreach and incorporating those concerns by the public into the plan. Because as we all know, this plan will only work if the people who are going to be affected by it and expected to cooperate with it feel like they have been brought along throughout the process, and there is a good level of trust. And that only comes along with more communication rather than less. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment? Any other public members? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you for volunteers as well. Treasurer's report is the next item.
So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the treasurer's report. This report is for March and April of 2018, and it covers your financial position as of April 30th and any financial transactions that have occurred for March and April. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, so there's an informational summary. Any have questions? Yes, Chuck.
Do we just get a report every 2 months because we meet every 2 months?
You're legally required to be informed of this information on a regular basis, so when you meet, I provide the information.
Okay. Any public members?
I have a question. So going on with the outreach, so back to Steinberger, what did the $624 for outreach services buy? What was that spent on?
It was community television of Santa Cruz County, so I've been learning to attempt to help you on this one. Did we televise
That
that?
was probably recording the Sky presentation. I could confirm that, but if it was through CTV, I know that's the one they've done in that time period.
All right. That's very difficult to find on the website, by the way. It's such a significant piece of information. It would be great to have it as a separate link somehow, rather than have to go in through resources and dig a bit. Because it's very good information. I'd like to see it a little more publicly easy to view once you look at the website, if you don't know that it's happened. Thank you.
No other questions? Then the next item is Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee oral report. 2 sections, update on the process and groundwater and then ecosystem working group.
Right, and so I will just give a very quick update. You do have in your packet 3 versions of meeting summaries, but one of them is a duplicate. So that was a test, and some of you passed and some of you didn't. Anyway, so the group, I think, is coming together. They're starting to work on giving us feedback. One of the challenges I think they're struggling with is that the way the regulations require some of the input to be given is in the negative. So what are we trying to avoid? And most people don't actually function that well thinking about that. They think about what they want to accomplish, and the thinking about things in the negative frame is a little bit of a challenge. But I think that the last meeting that we had at the end of April, which you don't yet have a meeting for, we we did start to see, I think, some folks really engaging with the content. It's taken a little longer than we had hoped, but we're adjusting our schedule. And I think the other thing that we've been working on is recognizing that this is going to be an iterative process, so folks don't have to come up with the absolute right answer in the first time around. That will, be able to give us some input to using the models. The models will come back, and other analytical work will come back and talk about how are we going to solve this problem? What does it mean to have this number? I mean, some things will become more concrete as we go through that modeling process, and I think folks are looking forward to that. But once they then learn kind of, okay, if we push over here, that thing over there happens, and they'll iterate it around at least 2 more times to finalize the plan. The other thing that we talked about, and we had talked about with you all at the last meeting of the board, was a joint meeting to talk about the range of the water supply project alternatives, augmentation alternatives that are being discussed and worked on. And so we are planning that meeting for your next meeting day, which is the 19th of July, and we're going to have these 2 rooms here, and there will be a joint meeting of the MGA Advisory Committee and the Environmental Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee and the board. There'll be presentations by staff talking about the range of things that are being worked on, the rough schedules, et cetera. So I think that would be a really good opportunity for a meaty discussion about why certain things are on the table and why certain things aren't on the table. And we're not going to go back in history, although we've been working on this issue as long as many of those in this room have. A lot of things have been on the table historically that aren't necessarily on the table now, but I think there'll be a good opportunity for a good discussion of what's on the table now, why that stuff is on the table, and when we're going to be able to make some more decisions about where to go with all of that. So I think that's a quick summary. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
I had a question just from reading summaries. It sounded like members of the committee were kind of asking for staff to come up with kind of more information fleshed out so that they can kind of
Right.
make a decision this way or that way.
And so at the February meeting in particular, we had a lot of concerns about this is too abstract, and please make us, give us more detail and more of your technical recommendation would be. And at the March and the April meeting, we came back and started to fill in some of the gaps. So we definitely got that feedback. The facilitators reached out to a pretty good sized cross section of the members after the February meeting to get individual feedback, and then we incorporated that into the kind of how we're adjusting the meetings. And I see that Marco over there has been at all the meetings. You may want to make some additional comments.
Yeah, so as I said, I think that the last meeting, we were starting to get more comfortable. I mean, it's both the committee itself learning how to do this and also getting a little more guidance, right? It's a compromise because we're not just a rubber stamp. The staff says do this, okay, yeah, do that, then it's the committee. But at the same time, being given a blank sheet, you're like, what do I do with this, right? I think we're learning to find that, and also touching back on the budget, it is learning how to visualize things, because, you have hydrometrics who lives and breathes this stuff, and they can say, the food lit is up by 2%, and that means something to them, and we don't know what he's talking about, and having a good visualization of what is a lot of data, right? And they can't just go over a 1,000-page report and say, therefore it's 2, that still won't tell us anything. So being able to present it in a way that, I'll say layman, can, in 2-page reports, say, okay, I get what you're getting at now, and therefore we can start having a discussion. So I think we're really making a lot of progress in that sense, and I do appreciate that we have slowed down. We were trying to do 3 items per meeting, and I think we were getting stuck in the mud. And we slowed it down a little bit, and I think it's giving us more time to learn. Maybe we'll accelerate it a bit forward.
I could add something to that. There's a tension that exists between our ability to advise and our inability to actually function as experts in the field, regardless of how much education we might get. And so that's really sort of what we're dealing with in a process sense now, as our brains are being loaded with the language of the statute, the language of hydrology, the language of basin management, of all these different things. And the reason I think that we wanted very much to have the information that we get down the line accompanied by staff recommendations is because we recognize that all of this will help us be able to make decisions, but it wouldn't necessarily enable us to function the way experts in the field do, to know what are the valid decisions to make without recommendations.
Sounds like it's coming along. Was there anything specific on the surface water, groundwater, and ecosystem working group?
John is working on it.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit about that. We did form a working group that's a sort of a subcommittee of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee, but it also brings in a lot of other outside experts. So we've had one meeting so far of that group. There's about 4 or 5 members of the advisory committee on the working group, but then we bring in the resource agencies, the Nature Conservancy, which has developed a whole guidance for addressing groundwater-dependent ecosystems under SGMA. One of the authors of that lives in Santa Cruz and has been helping us out. She gave a presentation at the first meeting. We're having our second meeting next week. So it's sort of bringing together information both on the biotic, the terrestrial, the animals and the plants that are dependent on groundwater being present. One of the most significant ones are our streams with the salmonids and the riparian vegetation, and how do we maintain our groundwater in a way that supports those ecosystems. So we're sort of going through the Nature Conservancy stepwise process which is tied back to what the SGMA requirements are, and we bring information to the committee. The resource agencies are very engaged. We had about 4 people from NOAA Fisheries and another 3 or 4 people from Cal Fish and Wildlife. So they're very interested. I think they're kind of seeing this as an example of what can be done. So they're all coming down from Santa Rosa and Yountville participating in this as well. So we've had the first meeting. We're really going to get into it on identifying or defining the undesirable effects of things we want to avoid and understanding better the relationship of that to groundwater, because there's a lot of other factors that say affect stream flow than just groundwater, and all we really address in this process is groundwater management. So we'll be having the second meeting next week, and then we'll have a third meeting in early June with a recommendation and presentation coming back to the full GSP Advisory Committee at their late June meeting.
So could I come back not to the subcommittee, but in my district of sport, actually DWR has been sending at least the last 3 meetings, sometimes 2 members, which is interesting. They're actually sort of watching us and we're semi-participating.
And DWR has actually suggested that we consider having more of these sort of working groups. I think that's a good approach, because it can be difficult dealing with the full committee on a lot of different topics, and maybe if you break it down and break it up a little bit more, but and then bring that back to the full committee, it would work. So this is sort of a pilot project on that.
All right, any other questions from the board? Any public comment on this item? Yes.
Becky Steinberger, I would like to go to those meetings. How do I find out when they are? They're not on the website. Are they open to the public?
Oh, they're not really public meetings, they're really more staff level meetings. Given that it's an ad hoc committee, it's not subject to Brown Act requirements.
I'd really like to know about them. I am interested and would like to attend. Can I get on a notification list?
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
The next item is just the meeting summaries.
Right.
I did notice the duplication.
Yeah.
Just informational. So those are all available in red. Thank you for those. Helps us keep in touch. Outreach reports?
So Sarah's not here tonight, and she asked me to pitch it for her, so she made a nice list. There's going to be a stakeholder meeting that's planned for June 14th at the Congregational Church of Soquel. The plan is to basically, since our last stakeholder meeting in, I think it was January, bring people people up to speed with what's been happening with the GSP committee if they haven't been attending those meetings. And then basically work in both a large group to go through what we've been doing in the GSP committee, and then break out into smaller discussion groups around 3 different issue areas to kind of get additional public input into the plan. We're also planning to have Jason Hoppin come from the county. He's the communication analyst for the county, come out to the next GSP meeting to provide support to the different GSP committee members so that they have a better idea about outreaching to their constituencies, which was one of the things that this board wanted for the GSP committee members. So we decided we needed to have some way to provide support to our committee members. So that should be happening shortly. And basically, he's going to make a brief presentation and then provide contact information so that there can be an ongoing discussion. Updates to the stakeholder engagement plan include partnering with existing efforts at the Water Conservation Coalition to do some more outreach to youth and working with our partner agencies to do some of that additional work. And then she usually gives an update. We have just about 650 people signed up on our listserv that get the monthly e-blast. And we're still doing the bi-monthly drop-ins and the monthly e-blasts.
Okay, questions about outreach? And members of the public? Okay, then we'll go to board member reports. Please.
A couple of weeks ago, Aqua had its meeting, spring meeting, and I'm on the Groundwater committee, so I attended. That's all about Sigma. It's an hour and 45 minutes, probably an hour and a half of it is all about Sigma. So a lot of things going on. They announced that there have been 78 grant awards, and we were one of them. And the critical overdraft areas like us have priority for the whole process. They're now in the process of trying to get the grant agreements arranged and signed and so forth. So it's good to know we're going to be on top of that list because doing 78 grants is pretty long. There is a document that's out in draft now on sustainable management criteria for Sigma. That's probably quite relevant to our planning drafting. There's another doc that's going to be out soon on water quality because that's another criteria we're supposed to follow. They're doing another round of basin boundary nods, and I don't know if we would even consider that, but if we are, that has to be done and submitted by June 30th. And the draft will be in October and the final will be in December. They have a new document which is out now, water availability for replenishment. And I find it kind of funny because, let's see, where's that? There's one page like this for the Central Coast.
Right.
So I prefer it's the cartoon version of the document. But it's out. So you want to see what it says about the Central Coast. It's available. And that's fine. So that's now done. What else? They're now working a lot on planning assistance for the GSPs. And they are now accepting applications for that service. And there's the document here about that. And one of the things they provide is monitoring well installation. So I know there's been some discussion about needing to have additional monitoring wells, and we might be able to get the state to do it for free for us. In any case, we should consider that, because this is going to probably disappear at some point. We don't miss out on something we might otherwise have to spend money on. They also do groundwater level monitoring training, downhole video logging, and other field activities. Of course, they also have support from models. So, ask this to staff. And something to consider.
Might that be a good future agenda item? Pardon? Might that be a good future agenda item?
Yeah.
To see how to pursue that?
Just
Of staff?
Yeah, we're looking at all this.
Look at it and bring it back.
In particular, talking about if we do need monitoring wells, and what might they be, and so forth.
And I think we have some recent feedback from Cameron that he thinks, from Georgina and Cameron, that they think additional monitoring wells will be needed. I don't know that we have the location so much dialed in, but the information that's going to the GSP committee next week. It's about groundwater levels and representative monitoring wells, and some things have come out of that, so good timing.
There's a lot of technical systems work being put together on docs, data, tools, which the monitoring well installation and so forth. It turns out Hydrometrics is doing a study on groundwater replenishment. Unfortunately, it's in the San Joaquin Valley, but we might be able to find out something from their work. You mentioned groundwater management systems, and there was a presentation by the Nature Conservancy. They have docs, data, case studies, but probably it's already known. The State Board and DVR have a panel about Sigma and water quality, because I guess that's something that a lot of folks haven't been thinking about yet. Like what impacts do various things have on water quality, and that needs to be part of our plan. And then there was one thing that just came out of left field that I hadn't even heard about. You also need to do a salt and nutrient management plan. And I don't think any of us probably, maybe Potter needs to do that, but I don't think any of us have. And they did say, DVR said that you can't, even if you have one already, you can't take it and staple it on your plan and be done. It has to be integrated into your plan. And everyone has to do a salt and nutrient plan along with this. And everyone was shocked about that. That's what they thought about it. That's a big And DVR is also doing some work on ecosystems, groundwater ecosystems, and water quality. So that will probably all come out. And finally, one thing that isn't associated with this, turns out that groundwater recharge is not considered a beneficial use. And it's not. So for example, if someone up the creek is taking water and putting it into their basin to recharge it, you can oppose that and say, you can't put that in there because that's not beneficial. That's a waste. According to the state constitution, it's not beneficial, it's a waste. So you need to put it back in the creek and let it come down so I can use it. So it's crazy. But anyway, they're looking at trying to see about putting some legislation together to make that fix. But it's contentious. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members? Oral reports, okay. Any staff reports?
Can I just make a comment on that last group, or is this not an opportunity? Okay. Lee with Well Intel, and monitoring wells are great, but they're really expensive. Just like a 50-foot well costs about $10,000. And the main reason people use monitoring wells is because they want to drop something in there for continuous measurements. And they can't use production wells because they don't want to contaminate that well owner's well. Well, with Well Intel, for $10,000, you can get 10 real-time continuous monitoring systems and engage well owners in your program. So it's just a much more cost-effective way to gather data. That's all.
Thank you. So there's no other staff?
I have some stuff.
Go ahead.
So we have moved forward with getting G Suite for governance in place, and so that means that any of the non-agency affiliated board members, private well owner reps, and GSP advisory committee members will have the option of using the MGA email for communications. And related to that, the county has been working on some policies on device use with emails as well as email retention. And so we may be coming back with future guidance based upon what goes to the county in that regard, but it's not ready at this point. But we do want to hold off any longer in getting the emails set up. And so there'll be follow-up with the private well owner reps as well as the advisory committee members about general guidance on business email and that sort of thing, but then maybe some more formal guidance that comes to the board in the future. Related to, Dr. Daniels mentioned the grant award, and so we are in the process of responding to that. There's some timelines on when we need to get the initial information back to finalize that agreement. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe at the last meeting, request the board member to have an update on the groundwater models and provide some, do that. So in the big picture, I'll start big and go small. We have a USGS groundwater model our hydrologist does that combines the surface and groundwater flow. It's a three-dimensional model, numerical model. And we have a TAC, a technical advisory committee that's overseeing that. So it's a panel of experts that are weighing there as they move through and do different things. They're modeling for the mid-county agency, but also for some stuff for Santa Cruz and us, focused on the mid-county groundwater agency work. So they're finished with the calibration. They've actually done some runs based on the water levels as current today. So very soon, into this month, we run into some climate change modeling type stuff, and that'll be a little bit of an iterative process. Then they'll add in the SkyTem data, so they have an expert on that. So they see how this model flows and water rains and flows out to the ocean or comes in. They'll have to put the SkyTem data there and see how that seawater interface fluctuates. And then in August, they'll run some actual scenarios that the board might want to see run. So that'll happen. Then they'll go do a little uncertainty analysis based on that. That's characteristic of every model. And then in November, hopefully, all the model stuff often gets delayed because people want to see more or something gets tweaked. In November, they would have to issue a draft.
What's in the draft report when it comes out?
It's basically the process they did use, the data, the assumptions, probably the uncertainty analysis a little bit. So if you tweak these main factors, is what happens. What those runs look like, project X, Y, or Z. Uncertainty analysis, and it's.
So that means it will be sort of like registering, the groundwater model agrees with historical groundwater
that's part of the
levels.
calibration, so they've done that.
And then going forward,
Yeah,
projecting
exactly.
with a couple of different scenarios, will that all be in the model?
Yes, that'll all be documented in the report.
And advisory committee is going to start to see modeling results in the summer, right?
I was going to say, maybe.
Yeah, because some of the minimum thresholds and those kinds of things will be getting established, and that's the next iteration of the whole looking at the sustainability indicators will be the modeling results to look at, so that people can say, well, gosh, I didn't really think that's good enough, or maybe we need less, or what have you, so they'll be able to dial them up or dial them down or change them altogether based on really understanding what does it mean if I say the number ought to be this.
So that would be the basis on which the advisory committee could request some additional runs of different scenario or something like that.
And you might go, well, what about if you change this? And they'll go, look, we did the sensitivity. That really doesn't play a role.
Right. So one more question. When you say that there will be some data available for the advisory committee in the summer, I think that's what you said, does that mean at that point that we will also be seeing extrapolations forward in time at that time? So we will see, what does it look like in 20 and 30 and 40 years?
I presume that's the case. I don't know if that's what you're going to get the first round, but what the advisory committee is working on this first is to give the hydrometrics input on each one of the sustainability indicators so that they can put those all in the model and then run them with those levels in and then come back and say, well, if you do this and you have your problem is this big, and then we start to talk about, well, how can we fill that gap, for example. That's where that iteration about, well, okay, we could pick these projects and then we feed back into the model, but maybe we should pick a project that's a little bit less than that and will be less expensive, and that iterative process we talked about it, in that graphic a few meetings ago.
Yeah, and I should add, there's a whole thing that they're doing for the county too, kind of part MGA, but because it's grant funded separately for them, that has stream interaction.
To give us an idea of what we might get, Scotts Valley did this a few years ago for their supplemental water supply. And we saw a graph of, they were putting 600 acre-feet of water into the basin each year. And you saw the water levels go up and then flatten off and just basically flatten until the end of time. So essentially, it eventually just stops going up anymore, because the other thing they produce is a graph of stream flow, and you saw stream flow going up too. So all the excess is going into the stream flow. So the water was going up. And then there was another graph showing what happens if they take water out of the basin during droughts. So every few years there'll be a drought, and you'd see the water level dip right down and come back up again. So you see those kinds of things about the behavior of various things happen. It's kind of a what if game.
And that analysis that Dr. Daniels was talking about also showed the time of travel for the recycled water project that they were looking at, because you have to show a detention time in the basin, and also you have to demonstrate that it's not going to impact other surrounding drinking water wells. So that was another aspect of that. So the model become quite a useful way of visualizing and looking at scenarios and, okay, what happens if you do X?
Yeah, so you can inject or recharge a basin with regular water or recycled, purified water, and they do particle tracking, so it shows where that water goes over time. So if it impact a certain well, as you go out and do what it's supposed to capture.
One point of information, I know that Bruce Daniels did his dissertation on, one part of it was on the temperature and evapotranspiration changes over time with an interesting hockey stick on it. Does the TAC have access to any of that information and looking and adding that to the model? But have they asked you for it, or do you?
They're using daily time steps of temperature and rain and all that, so it's a pretty, I'd say, pretty detailed. Yeah, so that's, I think, inherent.
So Ron did mention that the groundwater model is being used for some things for the Mid-County, some things for the GSP committee, also for SoCal. And Santa Cruz is going to be using this model, looking at aquifer storage and recovery and in lieu and other kinds of issues too. So this model there's a lot resting on the results that will be coming out of this modeling work over the next year or so. And it's great that we finally have got something that's starting to work for us.
I was going to mention a couple things. We already touched on the modeling. The county board did approve a contract last week with Hydrometrics to do some additional modeling under the grant that we're receiving from DWR for counties with distressed groundwater basins. So we've been feeding most of that back into the mid-county groundwater basin. We're focusing on sort of the impacts of inland well pumping and also the impacts on the streams. So one of the things we're going to have them do is essentially turn off all the inland wells and see what effect that has on coastal groundwater levels. Does it have any effect, or how much of an effect does it have? Also to change the assumptions on septic return flow, because we've had some arguments over, well, how much is that? Is it really important? So we're going to tweak with that and see if it really changes things much. Also, turn off some of the municipal pumping near the streams and see if that does anything with the amount of stream, the impacts on the stream flow. So we'll be focusing on some of those things. And again, they're going to be doing that over the summer for us also. I also wanted to mention what's going on in our neighboring basin, the Santa Margarita Basin. We've been moving along in that area. We have hired a facilitator to work with the board and work with the stakeholders in sort of a goal-setting process. And we also have hired a hydrologic consultant, HydroFocus, to come in and evaluate the model that we have for the Santa Margarita Basin that was developed over the years, and there's some questions to whether or not it meets SGMA requirements, and whether or not it's fully up to snuff for doing what we need to do. So we just had our kickoff meeting for that today. We had hydrologists from San Lorenzo Water District, Scotts Valley Water District, City of Santa Cruz, and county staff to meet with our new hydrologist. A new hydrologist coming into the area, so it'd be nice to get sort of a fresh set of eyes looking at this, as well as the old eyes looking over their shoulder to see what's going on. So, and then one of the requirements of SGMA is that the models are in agreement with each other at the basin boundary, so there's going to have to be some iterative process on that to look at how the models interact, or make sure there's some agreement at our basin boundary. But Cameron was on that call today also. Hydrometrics is the hydrologist for Scotts Valley Water District.
And I also talked to folks in Pomeroy at the conference, and they are dusting off their model and going to do another round of modeling themselves. The previous models didn't have much of a climate change. And it's going to be difficult to match them because ours is mod flow, as is theirs, but then we put PRMS on top of what's called GS flow. They put the farming process on top of theirs. So the stack is not the same, even though the bottom is the same. So matching them is going to be a little tricky, but you're right. We need to make sure that what we think flows from us to Paro is what they think flows from us to Paro. And similarly for other basins too. So that's something we'll have to adjoin basins.
Great. Any other staff reports? Okay, so any future agenda items? Yes.
I mentioned last year I had some concerns about the Senate Bill 623, and I still do. And David said, we'll put it on the agenda. And I said, okay, let's put it on the agenda. Well, I think it was brought up then that, well, the Senate pulled it, they're probably going to hold back and they're going to put it on. I don't think that thing is dead yet. And I would still like to have the MGA make some kind of statement about what we think, whether we want to have the water taxed or not. We are a critical basin. It doesn't seem like we should be sending money out someplace else when we need to take care of our own backyard. So I would like to see an agenda item and let the MGA is either for it or against it.
And so, I don't know if it's a current bill being considered or not, but we could bring up an update on it.
We know it's still out there.
How about as an update and then I guess we want the possibility to just throw that at that time. At least an update makes sense.
Why don't we just bring it up on the agenda?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Have that on the agenda. Anybody that wants something on the agenda, we can add it to that. Anything else?
Keep in mind that the next meeting is a joint meeting of the MDA with the advisory committee.
Might not be the time for that.
So we'll be talking about, all the various projects that are being looked at. There may be some other things that would be of joint interest for both groups to hear at the same time, possibly for some discussion.
Okay. Anything else?
Just question, when is the board actually going to get its first formal report on the model?
November?
Not until
That's the
November?
full draft. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I'd love to hear some, I mean, if the advisory committee is going to get some preliminary information, I would think it'd be of interest to the board to have some of that, maybe not, but that, for me, I would be interested in that.
So it might be that at least, we'd have to check with hydrometrics on this, but it might be that some part of the kind of problem definition, if you will, could be like the predecessor to the presentation and discussion of the projects. So let's see if that could work, and if that could work, then, we could do something fairly concise without going into all the details, and just see whether that's a context.
Yes.
Becky Center, I would like to ask that your board put on the agenda an invitation to the Popero Valley Water Management Agency. They have submitted their plan to the state, and I think it would behoove and be of interest to this group to really find out how their process went and what the state is saying and what the state is wanting more of, so that you can learn from them. They're ahead of you in this game. And I usually see Mr. Lockwood, the manager for their agency here, but I did go to their board meeting last night, and they had their management plan update, and it was very interesting. So I think this group would benefit by putting them on the agenda and making a formal invitation to come for a discussion. They are a bordering basin. Thank you.
I was just saying, Mr. Lockwood usually has come to most of our meetings, and we had a brief discussion with him today, and said there really wasn't much on the agenda of interest, so he decided not to come. But he is interested very much in what goes on here, particularly when we have substantive discussions. With regards to their plan, it has been submitted to the state as an alternate, and so far the state has been very quiet. They have given them no feedback whatsoever on
I don't think it's a new plan developed in this way. This is their old plan just submitted as,
the basic master plan update.
it's not a new plan.
It's an old plan. Actually, John and I sit on that committee about the project.
So it will be interesting to hear what the state does say when they finally say something, because that will give us insight into what they're doing. And I think that's probably one reason that they have not said anything yet, because they know it's going to be somewhat precedent setting when they do say something.
I talked with Brian at the conference again, and they don't think that it's going to be accepted because, for example, it doesn't have climate change here, that's a requirement. So one thing is the DVR can accept it, they can fail it, or they can send it back with various, add this or change this or fix this. They're thinking they'll probably get the middle kinds of things. They'll have to work on it to do a real plan.
Otherwise, I think they mentioned, when I talked to Brian about it, is that if they have to go back to the drawing board, they're going to be kind of behind the timeline. If they have to start.
They're critical. Yeah.
All right, so the only other remaining thing is just written correspondence. And after that is adjourned. And meeting adjourned.
I don't get to ask anything about that.
Letters from you that are in the packet.
But is this group not going to respond to any of my concerns?
You want to go and say something, go ahead.
They would.
Yeah.
I have a lot of concern about how the GSP meetings are run in terms of public comment. There is actually very little opportunity for the public to comment. The public is made to wait until almost the middle. Well, there's an opportunity at the beginning, but then at the very middle of the meeting, and then at the last GSP meeting, the last opportunity for public to comment was erased because the facilitator thought that the meeting was going to go too long. So it's very discouraging for members of the public to take the time to read material, to come to the meetings, and to be silenced. And that's really what it is. It's very frustrating. And I would like to see more of an opportunity for the public to comment throughout the meeting on a regular basis and take a more active, have the opportunity to take some active role in the discussion. At the last GSP meeting, it was amazing to me to hear the committee actually talk about making the goals easy to reach, just so that the plan succeeds and the state would not jump in if it failed. And I had things I wanted to say about that, but I was not allowed. The members of the public were not allowed. So I would really like to see some change in the structure of the GSP meetings with regard to public input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Absolutely.